Heading into the 2024 NBA season, it felt there's only one thing that can stop this Sixers team: injuries. And just 6 games into the preseason, before the regular season has even tipped off yet, these issues are already manifesting themselves. Now, we knew the situation with Joel Embiid hanging into the season, the no back-to-backs, the preservation, the load management, giving this guy the best chance at having that healthy playoff run. We were prepared for that. But in just his second performance in a Sixers uniform, we saw Paul George suffer a knee injury. Now, luckily, he did avoid the massive injury there. It is a bone bruise, going to be reevaluated in a week, but it is a bit of a deep breath. But just to add to that list, we have 2 new names that entered this injury list before the Sixers season even tipped off, that being Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about each. Jared McCain, the one we have kind of the full information on, that I do want to paint that picture and breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief for what was a really scary injury that I'm going to pull up on a second. And then Tyrese Maxey's injury, which just happened. I'm recording this immediately following the Sixers versus Magic preseason game. So really, that's the biggest takeaway to me, is just get to the regular season healthy. I don't understand why Maxey was out there in the first place, but nonetheless, let's get into what we know. So I'm going to start off by playing the video for Jared McCain's fall here. A nice little courtside video that we do have, and you can see he kind of takes a guy off a dribble, beats him with a crossover, misses the initial lay, and that's where he comes down hard on his head there. Really scary looking injury there, and I'm going to play that one more time. I'll give you the full context and details for what we know about the situation, but it does feel like it's not as serious as it first looked. But to pull it up again, I do want to note it isn't the head that he does injured here. I'll get into the full deal in a second, but you can see the way that he just snaps back and hits. A very scary moment when it initially happened. And now what we do know to this point is immediately following the game, the report the Sixers first sent out was that Jared McCain is being evaluated by the medical staff following a fall, including for a concussion. Further updates as appropriate. And shout out Austin Krell of On Pattison, who then tweeted out that nurse says that McCain is headed to the hospital and that it looked like he was having some difficulty breathing. Said it looked as though he got the wind knocked out of him, but that he'd never seen something like that. Now, luckily, we did get a couple more updates shortly following. First from Chris Haynes, and this came pretty national. This coming from the Sixers organization as a whole here. But Haynes reports that sources: Philadelphia first-round pick Jared McCain experienced pulmonary contusions from last night's fall versus Brooklyn. He's been discharged from the hospital and is home resting. Will be reevaluated today for concussion, but there's optimism that the rookie avoided serious injury. So a really great sign there. And we did get the latest before the game with Nick Nurse, who said, quote, he did get on the treadmill today and run without any issues. So the next step is getting him on the court tomorrow to see how he's progressing. But I think from where we thought it would be, it's pretty positive news. And yes, I would absolutely agree with that assessment here. Here is one more look at the fall from Jared McCain that definitely could have been way worse, particularly if he had hit his head or this ended up a concussion or a long-term situation there. Very grateful that is not the case, because I do think Jared McCain is going to be a bigger part of the Sixers team than people are recognizing. Now, before I revisit that one more time, do also want to acknowledge that he's now officially a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. That you're not a member of the Sixers until you have a weird injury. And thankfully, Jared McCain has been christened. We're talking about the pulmonary contusion, the latest to the list, but just to add of sesame seed allergies, shout out Zaire Smith, Bell's palsy, shout out Joel Embiid, gastrotendinitis, thoracic outlet syndrome, shout out Markel Fultz, an orbital bone fracture, getting hit by a car, shout out Kelly Oubre, a displaced meniscus flap, also Joel Embiid. Most of these are Joel Embiid. And more commonly phrases such as the Jones fracture, meniscus tear, navicular bone fracture, and etc. It does feel like the Sixers, more so than any other organization in the NBA, do have these unique injuries that tend to save pace and pop up at random times here. So, McCain, welcome to the team officially here. Now, as far as Tyrese Maxey goes, this is something that we don't have a ton on at the time. All we have from the Sixers organization at the time of me recording this is that Tyrese Maxey has a right thumb contusion and will not return tonight's game. And that's being from Kyle Neubeck of PHLY Sports, who says, my understanding is that he's staying out of the game just as a precaution. And while I do hope that is the case, that this is just a precaution, because we know how important Tyrese Maxey is to the Sixers team here, I still don't understand the risk and reward management that the Sixers need to get a little bit better than. There's no reason Tyrese Maxey needs to play all 6 preseason games. We know exactly who he is as a player, what he can bring to this team. And while you can argue that you need to build chemistry playing with Joel Embiid, with Paul George, and figuring out all these new faces as a whole, I don't see a ton of value in watching Tyrese Maxey play out there with Kelly Oubre, who he played with last year, and Andre Drummond, and guys that we probably aren't going to see him with a significant amount of time in the season. Yes, it'll happen. There's obviously going to be a ton of mix and matching, but I just don't see the risk reward for Game 6 of the preseason. And I did not pull up the specific video for Tyrese Maxey getting hurt. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when it happened. The first play where it looks like was Paolo Banchero driving down the lane, and Maxey kind of slaps down, ends up fouling him on the play, and they both kind of tumble. There was no sign of Tyrese Maxey being hurt after this play, but immediately following after Banchero hit his free throws, that Maxey himself gets the ball, is dribbling up the court, goes and hands it off right at midcourt, and then kind of walks away like holding his wrist a little bit there. So I'm not sure. He was being full court pressed at the time with some pretty aggressive defense. I don't know if it got banged as he was dribbling or if he did hit it while he was on the ground. The bottom line is all we know right now, it is a right thumb contusion. My gut feeling here, and I do hope this is right, is that it is not anything super serious here. But once again, I do think this is a mismanagement from the risk and reward standpoint, that I don't see the appeal of Tyrese Maxey playing out there, because we've seen how this preseason has gone so far. That we know that Joel Embiid sat out due to his knee rehab. We do know that Paul George suffered a left knee hyperextension that ultimately resulted in that bone bruise. Jared McCain, the pulmonary contusions, and now Tyrese Maxey with the right thumb contusion. It has been a preseason from hell. Just get me to the regular season where these games count, and finally we are there. It's just a couple more days. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about Jared McCain here. He's been a polarizing figure, and for obvious reasons here. We know this is a guy who's unapologetically himself, who's willing to put the target on his back, whether it is with the online antics, with the TikToks. I personally greatly respect how he wanders right into the mouth of the beast, that he said, I'm going to Duke University and being exactly who I am. And you know what I think he's going to be on this Sixers team? Is a damn good basketball player. That I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him for the preseason, and I'll go as far as to say I think his role within the Sixers team is going to be more important this season than I initially expected. That we can get into the draft conversations. Dalton Connect and Jared McCain are going to be forever attached because of the way that the draft played out. And for what it's worth, I totally understand the logic for wanting Dalton Connect to be the choice there. And to be perfectly honest with you guys, if I was on the spot making that selection, then I would have selected Dalton Connect. And I was a big fan of his game, had him higher on my individual draft board, all those type of things. But I understand the logic of going with Jared McCain. For starters, Dalton Connect, 4 years older, and at this point in Dalton Connect's career, for what we're looking at Jared McCain, he was playing community college basketball at this point. That this has been a kind of unforeseen trajectory that Connect is on. Now I'm buying into it. I do believe he's going to be a legitimate and NBA talent. But what I want to make clear here is they can both be good NBA talents. That this is not a mutually exclusive thing that either Dalton Connect or Jared McCain are going to be good. They both can be. There's a world where that works out, and I think we're living in it, to be perfectly honest. So with Jared McCain here, what I think the mindset for the Sixers were on one side of things is that I do think the trade value piece was in mind, that whatever you think about Dalton Connect and what do you think about Jared McCain, he's 19 years old. He's been a guy that's been a highly touted recruit for the entirety of his life. He's a guy who went to Duke, is a blue chip prospect, and he's still got that tie-in potential with a more malleable style of play. Jared McCain's appealing to more franchises than Dalton Connect is. Connect, yes, he's more of a win now piece. Yes, he's a guy who kind of fits that 3-and-D archetype, although I would argue he doesn't really have the defense whatsoever. I think that label gets thrown around a little bit too all over the place, that not all guys quite check those boxes, that sometimes they're thrown into that category. Connect, I would kind of hint towards that, and there really hasn't been enough talk about how bad of a defender that he truly is. Not saying Jared McCain is Mr. Lockdown in that area by any means, but the point being here that I do think for McCain specifically, you can buy into the potential, and I do think that the trade chip piece of this came into mind. Now, the other side of things that I also think played into the fact for the Sixers team is you think about who straight up is going to be the best player a couple years down the line. While Dalton Connect may be better than Jared McCain right now, I find it hard to believe that it's going to be the case 6-7 years from now. Then when you think about what McCain can bring to this Sixers team, for starters, he's a high-level elite shooter. I'm talking 40% plus for the entirety of his NBA career. That's my expectations for him. That's what he produced in college, and it's been his reputation for his entire time going up. On top of that, he's physical, he's a grinder, and he's a guy that's going to kind of grow the fan base. I feel that if you did not know this guy paints his nails and does TikToks, you would think that he was the grinder, the guy that is absolute gym rat. And guess what? Those things are true. That they can be together. They can be connected here. And that's kind of the beauty of Jared McCain. I kind of like the vibe that he brings off, the positivity, that all this fluff, all these quotes that have kind of floated out there, from everything that I've heard from people being around the team, and I did check in on, like, what is this? Is this just kind of floating around for a couple of beat reporter guys? And the bottom line is everything that I'm hearing is this is legitimate, that people are talking about it. The Sixers organization has been impressed with him. And I do think when kind of projecting how things play out, that there is a role where you can have him as this spot-up shooter, this guy who's ready to knock down three-pointers at a high level, and then gradually add more and more to his plate. I think the way that he finished inside, the number one word that I would use to describe Jared McCain through the preseason is fearless. I do think that there's going to be little by little, and I don't think either Jared McCain or whoever was selected with that 16th pick is going to be a player who ultimately decides their championship fate this season. No, it's going to come down to Joel Embiid. It's going to come down to Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, the role players that are guaranteed to be in those rotations. That's who's going to decide the future of the season. But when you think about adding talent, I do understand it with McCain, and I do think he's going to be a guy that is an impact player this season. So hopefully he's all good and can return to the court as soon as possible. I will keep you guys posted as soon as we get a Tyrese Maxey update, but I don't think it is as serious as really any of the injuries that we dealt with so far. Prayers that it is correct. Obviously, not a ton of worry in the long term. Maxey is a guy who has shown his durability, has been on the court real regularly, and obviously a lot younger than the other guys we're talking about with Paul George, with Joel Embiid. So not quite the same level of concern there, but you never want to see anybody hurt, and that's especially the case with just a couple days until the regular season tips off. So sending good prayers so we get good news on that. But ultimately, it does feel like the Sixers have dodged quite a few bullets. Hopefully, the injury bug is over for now, that we can have a relatively healthy season moving forward. But it is almost time for basketball to get there. So cannot wait to dive into every action that takes place on the floor this season. Make sure you guys are tapping in with me, being along for the ride. So smash that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.